Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, I have the poor man's iPad Pro with the one camera. I know, you don't have to feel sorry for me. I already do. Anyways, a lot of people have been talking about the iPad Pro lately, because maybe you noticed an iPad Pro with an M1 chip has been announced a few days ago. Yeah, a lot of people say you will be fine with this iPad Pro. I see that differently. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to First Clicks. It's another day, it's another click, it's another video. Obviously, we're here to talk about the iPad Pro with M1. An iPad with M1? Yeah, boy. Anyways, I feel like the highlight of all that is just that the iPad is now going to have 8 gigabytes of RAM. As a minimum. And if I'm not mistaken, this iPad and the one that came after it, the iPad Pro from 2020, only had up to 6 gigabytes as a maximum of RAM. Now, that is, I feel like, a way bigger problem for people than the chip itself. The chip itself is fine, right? It's basically an A14X with some tweaks, usually for either Thunderbolt controllers and stuff like that. Basically meant for the Mac, but at some point obviously put in an iPad, and now it also has a Thunderbolt port. It's way faster, up to 50% faster if I'm not mistaken, and obviously it has a more powerful GPU as well. There's a lot to talk about there, but I feel like the thing that's going to cause most pain for actual iPad Pro users is going to be the RAM, because 16 gigabytes of RAM, that is 10 gigabytes of difference. And this time around, I feel like we're going to feel that difference. Anyways, obviously we have WWDC 2021 around the corner. And usually Apple doesn't stuff their products full of hardware just to forget about them straight afterwards. That is another company. Samsung. Only 3 years of updates. What I was talking about is the M1 itself not being the star of the show. I understand a lot of Apple enthusiasts are going to be really mad at me, but hear me out. The 8 gigabytes of RAM and the 16 gigabytes of RAM is going to be a way more important factor in this whole upgrade. I feel like WWDC being around the corner is not a coincidence. Apple announced this product because they knew they were going to do something with iPad OS that has never been done before. And that means that they're going to step it up with probably professional apps like either Xcode, Final Cut Pro. Don't expect the whole suite to just be there. Don't expect Tim Cook to just say, well guys, we're just going to focus on bringing our entire suite of apps at once, just here on WWDC, and we're going to release it at one day and we're done. Probably not, right? It's probably going to be sprinkled in there. And yeah, there are teams working on it right now as we speak. And that means that obviously in the next couple of months, we will probably see them trickle in these apps. That means that this product it's not a super cycle, but it's quite a big cycle. It means that they're having plans for the iPad and the whole iPad lineup from now on and here on forward to be way more powerful and obviously come close to the power of a Mac. This chip is still just the first iteration, a low-powered version of whatever is coming next. But that doesn't mean that it's not still way too powerful for whatever we're doing now with an iPad. The iPad now just does some LumaFusion, maybe some iMovie, depending on what you like. Obviously, there are a lot of other apps, like Lightroom, Adobe Photoshop, quite heavy apps that already run on this device. And they are full feature set apps. But I feel like Apple is going to level that up to a completely different world. I am talking Final Cut Pro, finally. I am talking Adobe Premiere, finally. Like actual fully fledged apps for the iPad. I feel like it's coming, and I feel like iPad OS is finally going to be able to drive a full monitor and not just mirror a weird square in like, I don't know, whatever format. It's disgusting. I don't like it. There's so much coming, and I feel like that RAM, the multitasking that you will be able to do with it, the revamp that iPad OS is probably going to have to go through on WWDC to do all the multitasking, to get all these apps front and center whenever you're using it, whenever you're late for work and you still need to go into Xcode to prepare the presentation, but you need to change a couple of things, you need to change the logo because you're going to a different client. Stuff like that, you can just go into Xcode, go into Keynote, change the app, get your screenshots out, put them in the Keynote, and you are ready to present to another client, right? Just right from the iPad. You don't have to pick up a Mac. You don't have to pick up anything else. It's just the iPad. That does mean that obviously it should be cooled properly. I don't know how they're going to do that. We're probably going to hear more about that later, either from the user or from Apple. Now, like I said before, obviously Apple takes in consideration that they just released an iPad with 6 GB of RAM. So this is a vision. This is something that's coming, and they obviously are going to release stuff already for it. But it does mean that obviously you will be able to run it on the iPad that you have currently. Fine. But I'm talking about the multitasking. I'm talking about driving an entire display. I'm talking about having all these speeds going 40 gigabytes per second in the Thunderbolt port, especially when you're editing off an external SSD. So it's all going to highly depend on how iPadOS is going to work. Are we going to get separate windows? Is it still going to be split view, but you can still have an external display with separate windows? Like how many apps, how many things can you run simultaneously with 8 to 16 gigabytes of RAM? A lot. How many streams of 4K footage can you edit at once with an M1? A lot. But you also need the RAM for it. You need the GPU to have that shared memory for it. And I just don't believe that an A12X or an A12Z with 6 gigabytes of RAM as a max is going to compare to that. I don't think it will. Again, will you be able to run the apps? Of course. But you have to understand that there is a huge difference between an A12 with 16 gigabytes of RAM. I don't know if it doesn't exist, but let's say it exists, an A12X or an A12Z with 16 gigabytes of RAM against an M1 with 16 gigs of RAM. Obviously, that difference there would be smaller. But now you not only have a somewhat less powerful chip, but what I feel like will be way more noticeable is obviously that RAM. That amount of RAM is really going to be a problem for people that have to code in Xcode and also build that presentation, or get Final Cut Pro up, but also edit the thumbnail in a Lightroom, whilst Final Cut Pro is rendering. I don't know, there are so many different things that you can multitask in. I feel like Apple is actually going to turn this into a full-fledged computer. Is it going to replace the Mac? Obviously not. It's a completely different experience. It's for people that like touch input. It's for people that really want to have a keyboard that they can just slap on or slap off, right? If they just want to have a slab of metal in their hand and use their finger, they can. Other people just like to have a keyboard attached to it and something that just stays input, and obviously also has a fan to keep it cool, to keep the performance up. Stuff like that. Stuff that you can't put in an iPad, because when you do that, it's going to break. It's a part that can easily break, a fan. No, it's for completely different use cases, but it is coming closer together, and the M1 is a good step forward, but I feel like the RAM is actually something that is way more important. Guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you guys liked the video, and for now, hopefully, you guys click on.